My name is Ryan Carter. I'm 32 years old and work as a freelance travel journalist. Over the years, I've stayed in some of the most remote and eerie places in the world, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened that night at the Stanley Hotel. I had always been fascinated by urban legends and paranormal stories, but I never considered myself a firm believer. I enjoyed the thrill of visiting supposedly haunted places, staying overnight, and documenting my experiences. It was more of an adrenaline rush than anything else. The Stanley Hotel, famous for inspiring The Shining, had been on my list for years, but I always thought, it's just a hotel. How bad could it be? I booked my stay for a Tuesday night. I figured a weekday would mean fewer tourists, fewer distractions. Just me, my camera, and whatever I could document. I arrived in Estes Park, Colorado, in the late afternoon. The drive up the winding mountain roads had been peaceful, almost hypnotic. The town itself was quiet, the kind of place where time seems to slow down. As I pulled into the Stanley Hotel's parking lot, the first thing I noticed was how stunning the building was. The white colonial-style architecture stood in stark contrast against the backdrop of the towering Rocky Mountains. It didn't look haunted. It looked grand. But the moment I stepped out of my car, a chill ran down my spine. The air was colder than I expected for early fall, and for some reason, I had this unsettling feeling, as if I was being watched. I shook it off and grabbed my bags. The lobby was exactly what I had imagined. Vintage chandeliers, red carpets, and an old-time charm that made you feel like you'd step back in time. As I approached the front desk, an elderly woman in a navy blue uniform greeted me with a polite smile. "Welcome to the Stanley Hotel. Checking in?" "Yeah, I have a reservation for one night," I said, giving her my name. Her smile faltered just a little, so quickly that I almost missed it. She typed on her computer and handed me a key. "Room 217. You're on the second floor." I hesitated. Room 217? That was the infamous room where Stephen King had stayed, the one where the most paranormal activity had been reported. I hadn't requested it. "Isn't this, one of the haunted rooms?" I asked with a half smile, trying to sound casual. She chuckled, but it felt forced. "People say that. We prefer to think of it as historically significant." That didn't exactly put me at ease, but I wasn't about to back out now. I took the key, thanked her, and headed toward the grand staircase leading to the second floor. As I walked down the long, dimly lit hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The carpeted floors muffled my footsteps, and the old-fashioned wallpaper gave the corridor a dreamlike quality. I passed by a few other rooms, but the entire floor seemed eerily quiet. No guests coming or going, no sounds of conversation or TVs, just silence. When I reached room 217, I paused. I don't know why, but my stomach twisted into a tight knot. The brass room number gleamed under the dim hallway light, and for a split second, I thought I saw it tremble. I shook my head. I'm overthinking this. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was beautiful, decorated in an old-fashioned style with floral wallpaper, antique furniture, and a massive bed with crisp white sheets. But something felt off. The air was thick, heavy. The moment I crossed the threshold, my ears popped like I had just changed altitudes too quickly. And then, the door shut behind me. I spun around, heart pounding. The door had closed on its own. Maybe it was just the draft. I set my bag down and walked to the window, pulling back the heavy curtains. The view was incredible, mountains stretching endlessly into the horizon. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the grounds. But just as I was about to turn away, something caught my eye in the reflection of the glass. A shape, a dark silhouette standing in the middle of the room behind me. My breath caught in my throat. I spun around, but the room was empty. The hairs on my arms stood on end. I could feel something in the room with me, watching. I took a deep breath and grabbed my camera. If I was going to experience anything, I wanted proof. I started recording, walking around the room, speaking in a low voice. "All right, I'm in room 217. People claim this is one of the most haunted rooms in the Stanley Hotel. I've already had a weird experience with the door closing on its own, and I thought I saw something in the window reflection. but it could have been my imagination. I turned toward the bathroom and flicked on the light. The claw-foot bathtub gleamed under the dim glow. The shower curtain was drawn halfway closed. I took a hesitant step forward. Something about the way the curtain hung, just slightly swaying, made me feel like someone was standing behind it. I reached out, my fingers trembling as they grasped the edge of the curtain. I yanked it back. Nothing, just an empty tub. I let out a nervous laugh. Okay, that was... A loud thud sounded from behind me. I whipped around, my heart hammering. The nightstand drawer had slid open. I hadn't touched it. I swallowed hard, stepping closer. Inside, there was only an old leather-bound book. No title, no markings, just a thick, weathered cover. Against my better judgment, I reached in and picked it up. The moment my fingers touched the leather, a sudden rush of cold air swept through the room, slamming the bathroom door shut. I jumped back, my pulse racing. I was no longer alone in that room. I could feel it, and whatever was there didn't want me reading that book. I stood frozen, gripping the old book in my hands. The air in the room had changed, thick, heavy, suffocating. My skin prickled with an eerie static, as if something unseen was watching me, waiting for me to make a move. I swallowed hard and forced myself to take slow, steady breaths. It's just my mind playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The bathroom door had slammed shut. The nightstand drawer had opened on its own. And now, standing in the middle of that dimly lit room, I was holding something that didn't belong to me. I looked down at the book. It was old, really old. The leather cover was cracked and worn, and the pages were yellowed at the edges. There was no title, no author's name, just a strange, almost burnt smell that lingered in the air as I ran my fingers over it. A part of me wanted to put it back, pretend I never saw it, but another part, the journalist in me, wanted answers. I hesitated before flipping it open. The first page was blank. So was the second, and the third. But when I reached the fourth page, my breath caught in my throat. There, in faded ink, was a name, Elizabeth Wilson. I frowned. That name sounded familiar. And then it hit me. Elizabeth Wilson was the head housekeeper at the Stanley Hotel in the early 1900s. She had been in room 217 during a gas explosion in 1911. The story goes that she survived, but was badly injured. Guests and staff still claim to see her spirit roaming the halls, particularly in this room. I exhaled, trying to steady my nerves. It's just an old book. That doesn't mean anything. But as I flipped to the next page, I noticed something strange. The handwriting changed. It became rushed, erratic, as if someone had scrawled the words in a hurry. Do not stay in this room. Leave before midnight. I stared at the page, my fingers tightening around the edges. My mouth felt dry. It had to be a joke. Someone must have planted this here as part of the hotel's haunted reputation. But the ink, it didn't look fresh. The pages smelled like aged paper, untouched for decades. A chill ran down my spine. I turned another page. He watches from the window. I stopped breathing. Slowly, I turned my head toward the large window on the far side of the room. The curtains were open, revealing the vast mountain landscape outside, and in the reflection of the glass, a tall, shadowy figure stood in the corner of the room. I spun around. Nothing. The corner was empty. My hands were shaking now. I couldn't explain what I had just seen, but I knew one thing. I was not alone in this room. I grabbed my camera and hit record. Okay, something weird is going on. I just found an old book in the nightstand, and it has a name written inside, Elizabeth Wilson. Then it said, do not stay in this room, leave before midnight. And now, I just saw something in the window reflection, a figure, but when I turned around, nothing was there. I turned the camera to the nightstand. This book doesn't feel right. It feels wrong. As if on cue, the light above me flickered, and then a loud knock at the door. My heart stopped. It was slow, rhythmic. 3 knocks. I stared at the door, my breath shallow. Another 3 knocks. I hesitated, then forced myself to move. I approached the door cautiously, my pulse pounding in my ears. Hello, I called out. No answer. I reached for the doorknob, but the second my fingers touched it, all the lights went out. The room was plunged into darkness. I stumbled back, my breath coming in the short gasps. The only light now was from the dim glow of my camera screen. And then, just beyond the small circle of light, I heard breathing. Low, raspy, right in front of me. I pointed the camera toward the sound, but there was nothing. Then, a whisper, right against my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I dropped the camera. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed through the silent room. My body felt paralyzed, my mind screaming at me to move, to run, but I couldn't. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the lights flickered back on. The room was silent again. I stood there, chest rising and falling rapidly, my skin damp with sweat. The book was still on the nightstand. The window was still open. But something had changed. I felt it. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. And whatever was in that room with me, my legs felt like they were made of stone. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe properly. The room was silent again, but it wasn't a comforting silence. It was the kind that felt wrong, like the walls were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. The book still sat on the nightstand, but now it felt heavier, darker. I bent down, hands shaking, and picked up my camera. My thumb instinctively pressed the playback button. I needed to know if the camera had captured anything, or if my mind was just playing tricks on me. The video loaded. The screen flickered for a second before showing my room, the dim glow of the lamp casting long shadows across the walls. I watched myself flipping through the book, my voice steady but cautious. Then came the knocking. I felt the hairs on my arms stand up as I heard my own voice calling out, "Hello?" But what sent ice through my veins wasn't the knocking. It was what happened next. The lights in the video didn't just flicker off. They were turned off. I watched, horrified, as the camera screen showed the ceiling light slowly dimming, as if someone had twisted the switch by hand. But I had been standing in the middle of the room, alone. I fast-forwarded to where I had dropped the camera. The footage was mostly dark, but the microphone had picked up something, a whisper. I turned the volume all the way up and played it again. "He sees you." I dropped the camera. My stomach clenched, my heart pounding against my ribs. What the hell was happening? I forced myself to take a deep breath, trying to think rationally. Maybe my brain was just expecting to hear something. Maybe I was getting too deep into the whole haunted hotel thing. I turned back to the book on the nightstand. It had moved. It was now placed perfectly in the center of the table, facing me. I hadn't touched it. A cold, sharp fear crawled up my spine. I couldn't explain it, but I felt like I was being tested, like something in this room was watching how I would react. I reached for my phone and checked the time. 11:47 p.m. Midnight was approaching fast. The warning in the book echoed in my head. Do not stay in this room. Leave before midnight. My instincts screamed at me to pack my stuff and get the hell out. But at the same time, a twisted part of me needed to see what would happen. I grabbed my camera again, flipping it back to record. "This is insane," I whispered. The book moved on its own. The camera caught something whispering. "I don't know what's going on, but..." The bathroom door creaked open. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped my camera again. The door was fully open now, revealing nothing but darkness inside. I knew for a fact that I had shut it earlier. I lifted my camera and zoomed in. The screen showed the dark bathroom, empty, silent. But something felt off. I took a cautious step forward, heart hammering against my chest. Then, a shadow moved. Not a trick of the light, not my reflection. Something inside that bathroom moved. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The movement had been quick, like someone shifting just out of sight. And then, the worst part, from inside the bathroom, a single whispered word. "Stay." A chill unlike anything I'd ever felt spread through my entire body. That was it. I was done. Screw the challenge, screw the footage. I needed to leave. I grabbed my bag, yanked the door open, and practically sprinted out into the hallway. The second I stepped out, I felt like I could breathe again. The hallway was empty, silent. The carpet muffled my hurried footsteps as I made my way toward the elevator. I jabbed the button repeatedly, my pulse racing. Come on, a ding. The doors slid open. I rushed inside and hit the button for the lobby. As the doors started to close, I dared to glance back down the hallway. Room 217's door was still open, and standing in the doorway, a tall, dark figure. I didn't get a chance to see its face before the door shut, but I didn't need to. I felt it watching me, and I knew deep down that I had made a mistake. Because whatever was in that room, it wasn't done with me yet. The elevator ride felt like it lasted an eternity. The dim glow of the old-fashioned buttons cast eerie shadows across the mirrored walls. My breath came in short, sharp gasps as I tried to process what had just happened. That thing in the doorway, tall, motionless, watching me. I gripped my camera tightly, my knuckles turning white. My mind was screaming at me to run out of the hotel the second those doors opened. But a small part of me, the part that had led me here in the first place, wanted to know more. What had I just seen? The elevator slowed. A soft chime echoed through the small space. The doors slid open. I stepped into the dimly lit lobby. Everything was quiet, too quiet. The reception desk was empty, the antique furniture casting long, distorted shadows under the chandelier's flickering light. Something felt wrong. I checked the time on my phone, 11:58 p.m. I was cutting it way too close. I forced my feet to move toward the exit, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. Then, a noise, faint, from behind me. I stopped dead in my tracks. It was a whisper, distant, like someone speaking just out of earshot. I turned my head slowly. Across the lobby, past the dimly lit sitting area, was a grand piano. The keys were moving. Soft, eerie notes drifted through the air, each one delicate but deliberate. Nobody was sitting at the piano. The music played on its own. I felt my pulse skyrocket. This wasn't just a haunted hotel legend anymore. This was real. I gripped my camera, hit record, and slowly backed toward the exit. The music continued, growing softer, fading into an unsettling hush. Then, a loud crash from the second floor. I flinched, my head snapping up toward the balcony above. A shadow moved. Someone or something was standing at the railing, watching me. I swallowed hard. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. I bolted toward the doors. The second I reached them, I grabbed the handle and yanked. They didn't budge. I pulled again. Nothing. Locked. Number. No. I spun around, searching for another way out. My breath hitched. The figure from the second floor was gone. The lobby was silent again. I took slow, careful steps backward, my mind racing. Then, a whisper right behind me. "Why did you come here?" I turned, and everything went black. I woke up on the cold marble floor of the lobby. My body ached, my head throbbed, and for a moment I couldn't remember where I was. Then it hit me. The whisper, the locked doors, the figure watching me. I sat up too fast, my vision spinning. The lobby was dim, the chandelier barely flickering above me. I scrambled for my phone. The screen lit up. 12:07 a.m. I had blacked out. I forced myself to take deep breaths, trying to push down the rising panic. Something had happened to me, but what? I looked around. The grand piano sat in the same place, its keys still and silent now. The furniture hadn't moved. The lobby looked exactly the same, except the front doors were wide open. Cold night air drifted inside, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The parking lot was right there, my car sitting untouched under the yellow glow of the streetlights. I could leave. I should leave. But something in my gut told me I needed to check the camera first. With shaking hands, I picked it up and rewound the footage. The video started where I had last been recording, me standing in the lobby, backing toward the exit, the piano playing on its own, the shadow moving on the second floor. Then I watched myself turn, grab the doors, and freeze. My own body stiffened. My head tilted slightly like I was listening to something no one else could hear. Then, my arms moved, but I didn't move them. I watched in horror as I slowly lifted my own hands and pressed my palms flat against the doors. I wasn't pulling, I was holding them shut. My breath hitched. I hadn't been locked in. Something had made me trap myself inside. The camera shook violently, the screen distorting with static. Then a face appeared, right next to mine. Not human, not normal. The mouth was stretched too wide, the eyes hollow and dark. And then a whisper, "You shouldn't have come." The screen went black. I dropped the camera, my entire body shaking. That thing had been right next to me. I didn't think. I didn't wait. I ran. I sprinted through the open doors, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I didn't stop until I reached my car, fumbling with the keys. My hands were slick with sweat, shaking so badly I could barely shove the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. I threw the car into reverse, tires screeching against the pavement. The Stanley Hotel loomed in my rearview mirror, its dark windows watching me leave. I didn't breathe until I was miles away. But even now, long after I've left that place behind, I can still hear the whisper in my ear. "You shouldn't have come." And the worst part? I think something left with me.